Hello, YouTube. Liana here, continuing my series of discussions to elevate the discussions around gaming. I'm joined today by Tara Sophia, YouTube co-producer for Girlfriends TV and freelance writer. Tara, thanks for joining us today.
Hey everyone, thanks. I'm very happy to be here.
So you did a blog post fairly recently about H1Z1 as a microcosm of what's wrong with gaming. And I have it up here. I could, read it back to you, but it's your article, so I'd rather you tell people what you dealt with there.
Yeah, so I recently I just couldn't stop myself. There was the whole Twitch like big show of force with the battle royale, and I was like, God, this just looks so interesting and entertaining, and I'm a huge fan of zombie survival horror, and I'm just like I'm like, should I really spend $20 on this right now? I know it's early access. It's like I know what to get, what to expect from early access. And I'm just like, all right, I want to dive into this, and I download it. I start playing. I started on PvE server because I was just like, let me learn the mechanics of the game. Let me get good, as they say. And so once I kind of familiarize myself with the territory, the mechanics, the crafting options, everything, I'm like, all right, let me upgrade this to PvP because I really want to role play this. Like I really want to get into the zone. I want to work with other players, clean out cities, collect loot, and all this stuff. And what I found was the worst Call of Duty game I have ever played in my entire life.
Yeah.
It's like even on PvE, players are so bored because there's so few zombies
Yeah.
and lack of threatening zombies in the game that they will just stay in cities and blow up cars next to you because it's one of the ways you can actually kill players even on a PvE server.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, and PvP is just kill on sight. Like you're dead.
Right.
Like you respawn. If somebody's respawned near you, they're just gonna kill you. It's like if you're in town and you're trying to loot a water bottle, you're dead. It's like it doesn't matter what you're dead. I did stumble upon two nice players in the 5 days that I attempted it. It's like everybody else just it was awful. And then the other day after I put about, I'd say 15 hours into collecting this set of loot, and I was just getting ready to upgrade from a basic shack to a more reasonable sized base.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a shotgun to the back as they forced their way into my home. And then as I'm fleeing, I'm done. They already have, they know they've already got me. They
Mm-hmm.
kill me anyways as I'm running away. And of course, what happens is when you die, you respawn so quickly that you don't get time to either figure out what their usernames are. You get nothing. Because I just wanted to like pull a Klingon and just be like, you are without honor.
Right.
Uh, so that night I was like very defeated, but I kept going. And I was like, let me just get to an upgraded base, and then maybe everything will be fine. So I start gathering up supplies, and then the next day I log in, and someone smashed in my door and stole my stuff again. And I was like, this has nothing to do with zombie survival horror. Like this is just a kill every other player on the server Call of Duty game. I'm like, they've turned it into Halo. They've turned
Mm-hmm.
it into Gears of War. It's not about enjoying the environment of surviving the apocalypse with other players in a role-playing a massive online multiplayer role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it is, and that's very unfortunate. So I wrote this very long blog just raging about it, but I also offered 8 very great ways to improve it.
Yeah, you did. And what I found so interesting about the blog post, it opens up so many, many discussion topics. It talks about, the entire idea of PvP is something I thought about, this idea of it's called player versus player, and does that create a mindset? Because obviously, I don't know if you've been following the division at all. This is going to be a critical balance issue in that game as well, but it also sort of brings up ideas of community, why people act like assholes on the internet when they, don't do it in the real world, this idea of a different online persona. And then just those simple design things you identified, that sometimes giving players too much freedom actually, boomerangs around and really restricts the people who, don't want to just kill or be killed. They actually want to enjoy the game. And I think you identified the issue of it being an MMO. And I've been having these discussions with a lot of people lately that genre matters. And I don't even like calling it genre, because genre is it horror? Is it gothic? Is it, is it a mystery? Is it a romance? There's this different level in games. It's the type of game you're playing. And do you find there's a bit of a disconnect when you discuss these things with other people?
Not really. I mean, I've been around the block and I've been in gaming not quite as long as you, just
Hmm.
by the fact that you're just a few years older than me. But, I've always used things like RTS for
Hmm.
real-time strategy, puzzle games, it's like shooters, role-playing, like we have all these little signifiers and identifiers for what are essentially
Hmm.
gaming classifications or genres. So it's like I'm, fairly used to that. So it's like when I talk MMO, I'm thinking EverQuest.
Yeah.
It's like, which is what I started with. Most people started with World of
Mhm.
Warcraft because they're a little bit younger than us. I played Final Fantasy 11, Star Trek Online, Star Wars Galaxy, City of Heroes. It's like I have been around the MMO block.
Mhm.
So it's like for me, an MMO is basically, working with lots of players to get to the highest level to do in-game loot and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But of course, H1Z1 provides a different type and style of gameplay in that environment, in that you don't have levels. When you're dead, you're dead.
Hmm.
And you could potentially lose everything that you have. So for me, the way I looked at it, and the way the game kind of sells itself is, and I made reference to this in my blog post, was it's The Walking Dead. Like it
Hmm.
really is. Like you were in The Walking Dead. Except the problem is that in The Walking Dead, it took 6 seasons for Rick Grimes to just snap and go Old Testament.
Right.
It's like it took a long time for the human being, the soul of humanity, to be sucked out of you to the point where you're just kill or be killed.
Hmm.
I mean, until the events of Terminus, which I'm not gonna spoil for anyone, but it's like after the events of Terminus, it's like you understand why these characters have this sort of attitude of like just protect your
Right.
own, and like how important that becomes. It's like, well, the incentive that puts you in that mindset in H1Z1 is just, well, every other player is doing it.
Right.
Everyone's doing it, so the only way I can play this game is if I play this game just like them. And when I switched over to PvE and I talked to people, they're just like, yeah, it's just awful. It's just absolutely awful. That's why we went on to PvE. And then they're like, but you just got to deal with people trying to blow up cars.
Right. I
And it's
mean,
just
some would, playing devil's advocate, some would argue it says PvP. So that is a mindset. I got into this in WoW as well, that with PvP servers, it's just kill or be killed. Age of Conan was tough. Not just, if you weren't very good, if you didn't have a fast internet connection, you got slaughtered on PvP of Age of Conan. So couldn't it be argued that that is what PvP is for, is just slaughtering everyone?
what's interesting. They added a battle royale function
Okay.
to the game, which I probably should have mentioned in my blog, but I kind of wrote it on a whim and assuming people reading it would have played it. That's usually how it goes. But there is a battle royale mode, which is that's the whole point, and it's the last man
Hmm.
standing. So it's one of those, kind of like horde mode on Gears of War,
Right.
where it's just like, all right, you got this free for all, and you just get everyone down to the last one, whatever.
Well,
And then
that's,
you've
I
got
forget what that's called now. Warzone, I think it's called now. They keep
Warzone
changing the names.
maybe.
Horde mode is the one where you're defending the base.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's like you got your zombies
Yeah.
basically there as a nuisance,
Hmm.
and then it's wait until you get down to the very last player, and that person wins. So it's like I guess the translation error for me
Hmm.
is that when people see PvP, they automatically think battle royale.
Hmm.
It's like in arena modes. It's like, or like say like in MOBA games where it's just like, all right, I'm in my lane. I'm gonna go kill the other player in this other lane, and that's
Right.
player versus player. Yes, that is player versus player, but the spirit of what an MMO is, especially when you've got this type of environment, is for me personally, and this is why I talked about creativity,
Hmm.
is like, um, and I know servers have already done this, whitelisted servers that you have to get on by request.
Hmm.
and they have rules where it's just like no kill on sight. You have to have a motivation to kill someone. If you're robbing somebody, that's you as a homeowner can defend yourself with deadly force. But if you're robbing them, you can fire a warning shot, and if the person complies, then they're not allowed to kill you.
Okay.
It's like so they kind of set up this basically they it kind of like Dungeons and Dragons where it's like they set up a rule set for like this is like the rule of the role play and this is how we're going to do it. And that's the cool thing about having an option to kill people
Hmm.
because on a PvE server you're just stuck in this like well the zombies are really easy. There's way too much loot. It's like this is not a hard game. Now you add the component of well, if I can kill people, all right. Well, then it ups the challenge. So you figure you can find yourself in scenarios like and this spoils anything for anybody. I'm sorry. Like in The Walking Dead, where you had Rick's group in the prison, and then you have the governor
Hmm.
and his town, and all of a sudden these two groups of people they're just too close to each other, and they can't share the same space together.
I think if that
It's like
spoils anyone for The Walking Dead, they've been living under a rock.
a
That
rock.
information is
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. So it's like but now you have motivation.
Mm.
It's like you're they were back and forth attacking each other's bases. It's like there were hostage situations. It's like there was drama. There was that you have to create your own story in
Mhm.
this type of environment. And in order for that, dialogue within the game to happen is you have to have a subset of players ready to put forth that dialogue. And unfortunately, the default position of the game is just PvP, open like full server.
Mhm.
So it's like until people create their own servers and create these rule sets, it divulges into just Planet of the Apes.
Now that's an interesting thing with zombies. I mean, with EverQuest certainly, and with World of Warcraft, there's this otherworldly lore that I think. I mean, the thing that bugged me about playing World of Warcraft when I played it is, I like the really non-human characters like the orcs and the taurens and things like that. And I'm like, I'm a cow person with big feet and I'm a shaman, and I tend to play male characters in games like that as often as I play female. And then you go into these pubs and it was people talking US politics. And it ruined it for me. But with
Hmm.
zombies, it's much closer to our world. And I mean, some people have done zombie games in like the 1950s or space zombies, with like Dead Space is essentially a space zombie game. But zombies have been done and done and done and done. And for me, and I'm interested to get your views about it, the cool thing about zombies, I think the reason they're so popular in video games is because they're a humanoid enemy you don't feel bad killing, but at the same time, they're a humanoid enemy with almost no personality. And I think that's where we get sort of the different variations on zombies. How do you get around that challenge? How do you feel about that sort of issue of, immersion when it comes to zombies?
What's interesting, you actually take it from the opposite approach as me.
Oh, really?
Because I look at it as it's the identity of the person playing the game that they can go, I can relate to this situation. None of us have experienced the zombie apocalypse, but it's like at the same time, it's like they're not superheroes
Right.
trying to survive the zombie apocalypse. It's like that could be me. It's like I could just be working my 9 to 5 job, or like in Telltale games, The Walking Dead. All of a sudden, 1 minute you're in the back of a police car, the next thing you know, you're flipped over on a highway and you're about to be eaten by zombies. Sorry if I spoiled the very beginning of the game, but it's in the trailer for crying out
Yeah.
loud. Get good. Start playing zombie games.
Yeah.
It's like, but the point is, it's like it could be anybody. It's like now, of course, in Resident Evil, it's a little bit different because some of it's a little bit different. But in the large majority of zombie games, it's like you're just a person.
Hmm.
You're just an average Joe doing their thing, and then all of a sudden it's an apocalypse, and you have to survive it. And it's just usually it's collecting supplies
Hmm.
and making makeshift weapons on the go, and you're just like, I think what was it, Red versus Blue did a PSA called the Zombie Plan, and I highly suggest everyone watch it. And it's like they're having this conversation about what's your zombie plan, and I think it was Tucker or just thinks it's absolutely ridiculous why anybody would have this. And it's like, no, I know so many people that are just like, oh yeah, when the zombies come, I've got like this amount of dry food, I've got a shotgun, it's like I've got this. It's like when Armageddon hits, I know what to do. Now, I don't know if it's just because of like cultural conditioning, but it's like at the same time, I just think it's that, the banks fail, that
Mhm.
just that apocalyptic, when shit hits the fan, it's like they're ready. Like there's just this animalistic side of the human being that's just like, I'm ready to survive. I'm tired of sitting behind a desk.
See, that's interesting because I have the exact opposite reaction to those sort of scenarios. I've come to the understanding that if things were to hit the fan like that, I'd be dead. I have too many health problems. I can't even go out in the sun without blistering, like, my skin breaks out in tumors. I just would not survive the first 5 minutes of a zombie apocalypse. I can't run. I have a bad leg. So that kind of stuff is just depressing for me. It's a real confrontation with my own, physical vulnerability. And I'm sure I'm not alone with that. It might be a cultural thing because, maybe I'm fortunate enough to live in a culture where we can admit those sorts of vulnerabilities. And in other places, people have to posture because they don't feel like they can show weakness. But I think that touches on another thing in gaming sort of as a whole. And the cool thing about zombies is it always branches off into larger topics, right? And this whole idea of vulnerability during the play experience in gaming is something that's very interesting to me because people do have exceptionally strong feelings about it. So where do you sort of sit on that idea that a developer can predict with any certainty how people are going to engage with their game? I guess that's what's at the core of this whole thing.
Well, that's the power of mechanics,
Hmm.
which is why I outlined several ways to fix the community problems is to fix the mechanical problems. I mean, just for the example of H1Z1, the zombies do not threaten you.
Right.
They don't intimidate you. They don't scare you. They can almost never kill you if you have a brain. So it's like when you're not threatened like that, you're just like, nah, I'm not really worried. Now you play a game like Zombie U, oh,
Yes.
it's like one zombie's on the screen and you're like, I'm out of here. I'm
Yeah.
out. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. And it's like, so it's like the developers effectively created a way. It's like, no, no, no. If another player could jump into Zombie U and help you, you would just be like, please get over here. Like, you watch my six. You help me out. I work with you. Let's clear this room together. So it's really very mechanic driven on like what scares you, what threatens you, what intimidates you. It's like in Zombie U, man, it's like the jump scare. It's like it gets overused in certain genres and stuff like that. Absolutely, but man, Zombie U had like two or three where I was just like, I almost wet myself. I was just like, oh my, you got me good. I was not expecting that.
That's an exceptionally elegant game on um, a lot of fronts, though. I think that Ubisoft doesn't get enough credit for what it does artistically with games like that, and with all their products because people just go on bug hunts. It's just a trend now in games to expect flawless performance at launch, which, especially in the
Hmm.
PC market, is really that's a tough thing to expect because of the various permutations of Frankenboxes that people are using. When you get into PC games, you have to be prepared to calibrate and you have to be prepared to optimize your system every single time you buy a game at launch because they don't have all those permutations. They can't I mean, there's just too many variables for them to do it, but people just it's I think some people find it fun going out there and trying to find the mistakes on certain games and not others. And I find it one of the things I find so interesting is it is sort of that get 'em feeling. The experience you had in H1Z1. It happens in the community as well. There are people in groups who are seen as safe targets, and then there are sort of people in groups where it's like, oh no, we don't touch them. Have you noticed that?
Yes,
Yeah.
and what was interesting was, and I don't like going down this road,
Hmm.
but I know how my voice sounds, um, being a transgendered woman, and I had this one guy after Kill Inciting me,
Hmm.
uh, be like, "Hey, you're not a girl. That's false advertising," and then shot me again. And I was just like, I was pissed. I was livid. And my girlfriend was sitting next to me on the couch. And when I told her like what had just happened, it's
Hmm.
just like the look of just sadness on her face. It's just like I was like, everything on your face is what I'm feeling in my gut right now. Like I just want to like get jump through the computer and just wail on this guy for that. It was, yeah.
Well, that I mean that trash talk, that's a divisive topic in gaming because some people insist that trash talk is part of, part of the culture as much as a cop out as that may be because culture evolves. And then other people are like, well, there are certain types of trash talk that are fun. Like this is my bias talking now. There are certain types of trash talk that are fun and certain types of trash talk that are just hitting too tender a spot. And to me, that should be one that common sense dictates you don't attack someone's sexuality, you don't attack someone's gender identity, you don't go after all those identity things. And that, I mean, I know that's totally subjective because that comes from playing basketball for me, that everybody thinks the smack talk is a huge part of basketball, but everybody sort of knows there's limits because you have to hang out with those people after the game. Whereas that understanding doesn't seem to exist on the internet, even though they claim they borrow trash talk culture from sports.
Yeah, you can't see me shaking my head, but I totally am. I think the difference is, and this is why I actually stopped playing Halo Reach.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I left the first person shooter like genre and just playing a lot of games online was because of how bad Halo Reach's online community got. And it was now granted, it's not Microsoft's fault. It's the bad parents who bought their minors an
Mm.
M-rated game. So it's like every day it was just how many 12-year-olds whose balls haven't dropped yet do I have to mute every single day because all they want to do, and if you have to censor this, go right ahead,
Yeah.
but they just say faggot
Yeah.
over and over and over and over again. And it's like to me it's like if that's your idea of trash talk, you need to get a lot more creative. And it's like, well, it doesn't offend me. Like, I mean, I love Louis C.K. and stuff like that. You can make a good faggot joke, but it's like that. If that's your extent of your vocabulary, it's like you need to work on it. And the other side of the thing is, I think it's because I play Magic the Gathering, and it's like we will trash talk in Magic the Gathering, but it's on a world of difference than what you're gonna see on a first-person shooter game that has this audience. You have 45, 35, and 12-year-olds
Mm-hmm.
all trying to operate in the same environment, and I think that's the real problem there. I think that's where it creates a lot of these issues. So it's like, but when you're at an actual tabletop, you're at a store with real people, it's like you don't talk like a
Mm-hmm.
moron. It's like one, Magic's a very complicated game, especially if you want to get good.
Yeah.
It's like, and two, it's like it would be completely uncivilized
Mm-hmm.
to talk to people like that in real life. And even when you're playing Magic the Gathering online or like tappedout.net or whatever, it's just like yeah, like oh it yeah, you could talk smack, but it's like it's not that same. I don't know, just a annoying 10-year-old, 12-year-old mindset. Vulgarity, thank you, sweetie. It's like being vulgar. It's like you could be trash talk without just being so vulgar.